Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. When you think of extreme weather in Canada, probably the last thing on your mind is tornadoes. However, there is a major tornado research program underway in Canada called the Northern Tornado Project. And I have with me today drone pilot Dr. Connell Miller to talk about it. Hey, Connell, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. Yourself?
Good, good. Yeah. So tell us about yourself and the Northern Tornado Project.
Sure. So I'm a researcher for the Northern Tornadoes Project, and what we try to do is detect every tornado in Canada. One of my big responsibilities is leading the drone program to use drones in a way that helps us advance our mission of improving severe weather understanding, mitigating against harm to people or property, and potentially in the future, examining implications due to climate change. The Northern Tornadoes Project, we are a organization. We have a staff of engineers. There's about 3 or 4 engineers or other research assistants. We have a meteorology team. There are 3 to 4 meteorologists that help us with the detection of these severe weather events on the radar and sort of give us a sense of where we need to go. We have at any time 5 to 6 graduate students or postdoctoral students, as well as any number of summer interns. This year, we're hoping to get about 10.
Wow.
So we're quite a big organization. And the other part of the Northern Tornadoes Project that we rely on is what we like to call citizen scientists. A lot of times when people go and experience a severe weather event, they will immediately go to Facebook or Twitter and talk about it, report about it. This is what I saw. Look at this damage to my barn. And we go through that information and we contact people and say, hey, what did you see? What did you hear? What time was it? And we get information from them. And then maybe we'll even go like visit the event after and talk to them. And it's because of some of these like citizen reports that we get helps us with our mission of detecting every tornado in Canada.
Wow, fantastic. And so how many tornadoes are there?
It depends from year to year, anywhere from 75 to 125 is probably the number we're looking at right now. In 2021, sorry, there was 100 tornadoes, so quite a year. Over the history of trying to detect tornadoes in Canada, we've been having a big problem detecting tornadoes in the northern regions of Canada just because the population density is so low up there. It's literally the age-old tale of if a tornado knocks down a tree in a forest and no one's around to hear it, did the tornado actually happen, right? The other thing is it's not always about the number of tornadoes. It's sometimes the severity is quite important. So Ontario this year had quite a record number of severe tornadoes. We classify a severe tornado as EF2 or above, which is 150 kilometers per hour over above. This year, Ontario had 15 of them, whereas before it would be like 2 to 3, right? So that includes a lot of big severe events, including the Barrie outbreak in July of 2021.
So how did you get involved in the project?
So I did my bachelor's degree in engineering at Western University in structural engineering, and through that I found a real passion for what we call natural loads. So how snow, wind, earthquake, and that sort of things affect buildings here in Canada. And through that, Western University is one of the most world-renowned facilities for wind engineering. We have one of the original wind tunnels that were used for actually first testing like structural buildings, places like the CN Tower or the Twin Towers. So we were Western was the facility that did the wind testing for all those things. So there's a natural opportunity there. So I ended up going into graduate studies into wind engineering, which is basically just a mix of structural engineering with a heavy focus on fluid mechanics. And I did my PhD on how cladding reacts to wind. So that's sort of the outer layer of your building, vinyl siding, shingles. that sort of thing. So once I was done my PhD, I was offered a job there full time to continue the work I was doing, because as a graduate student, I began developing their drone program there, just out of not personal interest, but just looking at the applications of what drone technology could actually bring to the table for these surveys that we can't get on the ground. And I've been working there ever since.
Oh, wow. That's quite a story. And it's quite typical of people's careers. You start out doing one thing and it evolves over time into something else. So that's fascinating. So you started to bring drones into the picture as well, for the obvious thing of aerial photography, I guess. What sort of drones do you use?
Yeah, so we started using drones back in 2018. And we started off with mostly quadcopters. I think the first one we ended up buying was like the original DJI Mavic Air, I think. And we started off using them just for getting photography in places that it was not safe for humans to get to, right? So things like, well, we want to take a look at the roof to wall connections of a building, right? The building's ripped off. One of the things that tells us a lot about construction quality is, were there a proper connection between the roof joist and the wall? And we can't get up there with a ladder because there's nowhere safe to put it, and that sort of thing. So using drones for that purpose. In forested areas as well. I very vividly remember a time before drones where I went crawling through a forest where trees were down everywhere, and I was climbing like 7 or 8 foot walls of just these down trees, trying to get pictures of the area. So using drones for that purposes has really helped us a lot. And then even if we're not taking pictures, being able to send something up in the air and taking a look at where could this tornado path possibly be, right? Because with the big events, it's quite obvious where to start. For some of the smaller events where we see something on radar, but we're not totally sure, being able to send a drone up and just take a look around the area and see what we can see has been very helpful.
Sure. Yeah. And inexpensive too, compared to a helicopter or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then one of the other things we started doing a few years later was starting to get into orthomosaic mapping using drones. So we'll say, well, we want to map this area. We will program the drone to fly in a grid pattern across that area, take thousands of photos, stitch them together in software after, and get almost what's like a Google Maps image, but instead of like a 3 meter per pixel resolution, you're looking at a 1 to 2 centimeter pixel resolution.
Wow.
And for that's really helpful, because one of the things we look at in determining whether it's a tornado or a different type of like straight line wind event is things like debris patterns, right? So having something that's geo-referenced, and we can take a look at like debris directions of different things, which way did the trees fall, and we can know that for sure, like it's a reference to north, we're getting like the true tree fall directions, and being able to like see it all on one big map instead of looking at like a few photos and then trying to orient it the right way has been a real game changer for us. So to that end, we've started to move towards fixed wing drones just because they're more efficient in the air, just because of the aerodynamics and that sort of thing. You can be up in the air for longer, you can fly faster, you can carry heavier payloads and better cameras and that sort of thing.
So which kind do you use for a fixed wing?
So yeah, we use the Wingtra 1, which is a vertical takeoff and landing drone. So I like to call it a bit of a hybrid drone because obviously quadcopters, one of the advantages is you can sort of put them down everywhere and anywhere, and take off and not need a whole lot of room compared to a fixed wing where you basically need like a whole farmer's field because you're launching it off horizontally. Right. And you need a lot more room compared to a quadcopter. this is sort of like the best of both worlds. So it takes off vertically, very similar to a quadcopter, and then it uses the fins on the bottom of the wings to transition from a vertical takeoff to complete horizontal fixed wing.
Okay, that's amazing.
So
that is
yeah,
really cool.
so it's really cool because we used a traditional fixed wing for a year, and especially in the very like forested areas of Ontario, it can be very hard to like find an area to take off that isn't someone's private property, essentially, right? And we don't want to be doing that, right? So we'd have to find like a park or something that's like suitable for us to take off. Whereas the Wingtra, we can take off from like the side of the road if we absolutely have to.
Now, in the picture, and I'll have the picture up for our viewers to see. That thing looks immense. How big is it? Like, how big is it?
Yeah, it's pretty wide. So it's a 4-foot wingspan, but it's also light, right? It's only around 4 kilograms when you take a look at the payload, right? So we're still way under the 25 kilogram limit for any of the Canadian restrictions and things like that. And so it's a bit of a pain to get through airports and things like that. Just because it does have such a wide wingspan, and that wingspan does not come apart whatsoever. So we're carrying what looks like a huge like bass guitar case essentially through the airports when we need to travel across Canada to these different events. But it's pretty light, so it's not terrible, but it definitely, we have to pay for oversized luggage every time. So
I guess you do. Yeah. Not something you stuff under the seat.
No.
No. So you mentioned traveling. So when these events occur, how often do you go there, and how fast do you go?
We try to get there as soon as possible. So one of the great things I've learned about Canadians over the past few years of working at this job is they are very quick at cleaning up damage. If there is a storm that goes through that community, that whole community comes out and that thing is cleaned up very quickly.
Wow.
So we try to get there as soon as possible, meaning that as soon as we know there's a significant weather event that we need to be out, it doesn't matter if it's across the country, we will probably be going there. As an example, back in 2018, I sat down at my desk. It was 8 in the morning. I just sort of started getting ready for work, and I get an email saying, hey, how fast can you get to the Northwest Territories? There's a big tornado there and we need you there as soon as possible. So thankfully, my wife is very gracious in the summer when I have to just sort of get up and leave at maybe an hour's notice. So.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's good. It's good that you have good support in the family. Yes. So you're heading into an emergency area, or an area that has had an emergency. Any particular factors that you're dealing with when you're flying, if you get there within a day or so?
Yeah, for sure. It depends on the level of tornado and what area was hit. If there's if it's a very rural area, generally we don't have any problems. But for some of the bigger tornadoes, like the Barrie tornado back in 2021, as well as the Mascouche one in Quebec in 2021, yeah, we have to liaison with emergency services and say, hey, we want to fly this drone in the area. This is who we are. These are our credentials. Do you have a problem with this? Do you need us to wait until you're done so-and-so operations? Any emergency services I've talked to has been immensely gracious and very easy to work with. The other thing we need to look out for on these bigger events is media coverage. So a lot of times media, or just even people with small aircraft, will sort of fly over the area and take pictures and do what they need to do, and that's fine. But it does make it a bit of a pain for us to try to keep a lookout for all of these helicopters and Cessnas and that sort of thing. The other one we run into quite often is, especially up in the Muskoka area, seaplanes. Those can be a bit of a hassle sometimes, but yeah, it is what it is. We're just always on guard and always have a visual observer. We always go in pairs of 2, or at least 2 to these surveys, right? So if someone's flying the drone, we always have one person as a visual observer, if not more. So that's always very helpful to keep an eye on the airspace in the area.
Cool. So how many drone pilots do you have on your team?
We have quite a few. So we have two of us, including myself, with an advanced license. We're the two full-time engineers on staff. So we just make sure that we're the most licensed. But then anybody, even if they're like a summer student for 4 months and that's it, we make sure they have their basic license, just because it's not terribly hard to get. It's pretty straightforward, and it's good to have that knowledge, even if you're not going to be flying a drone a lot. Even if you're just visually observing someone else flying the drone, it's good to have the knowledge of what do you need to look for, what are the warning signs, what are the regulations, and if the case that they do need to fly the drone in a rural area, they're ready to go and they've been trained. So yeah.
Oh, very good, very good. So you get there. What are the weirdest things that you've seen in terms of tornado damage or oddities?
Yeah, we see quite. I mean, it's a stunning sort of thing to walk into, right? Just nature's wrath, essentially, right? So, you see a lot of things, but some standouts. Trampolines. We sort of have seen trampolines in every distinct location that we can. You should really, if you've got a trampoline in the backyard, go check if it's pinned down to the ground right now. Trampolines and power lines, trampolines wrapped around cars, trampolines on top of trees, trampolines in lakes. Another one, we were surveying a tornado in sort of the southern area of Ontario there, came across a jalapeno farm and just jalapenos everywhere. So many jalapenos, and the farmer was gracious enough to be like, well, if you want any of them, if they're on the ground, they're yours. So I took a few and made a very bad hot sauce out of it. And finally, there was in 2020, this is sort of a, you don't think lightning strikes twice in the same place sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a tornado that went through Belmont, Ontario, which again is sort of southern Ontario, sort of traveled from southwest to northeast, destroyed a few barns and some crops and that sort of thing. A month later, or not even a month later, another tornado went through the Belmont area, going from northwest to southeast. And there was one poor farm that sort of X marked the spot there where the two tornadoes had crossed paths. He had a barn that was mostly destroyed, and he had started the process of rebuilding it, and then that rebuilding process got undone, essentially, right? So that's probably the craziest thing I've seen.
What are the odds of that? That must be like
not great. Like Canada's a very big country with a very low population density, right? So to be struck by two tornadoes in the span of less than a month is,
yeah.
I don't know whether you should buy a lottery ticket after that or not, right? Like
or move.
Or move. Yeah, maybe move.
Wow, that's amazing. So fascinating stories. So what's ahead for yourself and for the Northern Tornado Project?
Yeah, we're always looking for like what's the best new thing in both technology and how can we continue to improve our weather detection capacities, right? So we're doing a few things. Number one, in the drone front, we're going to start using LiDAR systems to get 3D maps of the area. So that's very exciting. You can sort of, this LiDAR system we're looking at, you can sort of do both handheld and drone and sort of combine the scans together after using all the different angles and things like that. So we're very excited about that. We are also starting a new joint project called the Northern Hail Project, where we're going to be looking at specifically the Calgary area, the southern Alberta area, which is the hailstorm capital of the world. We're going to be looking at hail damage and how we can maybe warn people better about that, as well as how do we use drones for that sort of thing, right? So one of the things we're looking at doing is doing that orthomosaic mapping in fields that have hailstones in them, get that image, and then use machine learning to automatically detect hail sizes and use that to sort of get a sense of the extent of the storm instead of some poor like undergraduate student going out and measuring hailstones for like an hour, right, in that one field. So we're hoping that'll help in that way. And yeah, that's sort of what we're looking to in the future. We're hoping that this research will continue on, and that we can continue to inform Canadians about what their true severe storm risk is. And so once people know that, maybe people will take into consideration, like, what plans should I have if a severe storm comes through? Like, you should have 72 hours worth of food, right? Because you don't know whether you're going to be without power and for how long. There's been like people in Ontario this year that have been without power for over a week, right? So just having that sort of plan, knowing that, hey, maybe I should get down to the basement and take these severe weather alerts more seriously, because I know my area, if you live in Belmont, Ontario, maybe I know that my area is prone to this sort of thing, right?
Right. So. Yeah. Well, that's a terrific recommendation, and I think a very admirable goal for this organization. And thank you very much for your contribution to it. And thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.